Okay, let's start. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming at this afternoon session that will be quite long. We are going to cover a number of issues related to the impact of AI and overall generative AI on first in general on the jobs in general, and then with, of course, a very deep dive into the impact on the legal profession. This will be especially the first part of the presentation before the coffee break. The second part will be instead devoted to explore the impact of this technology on the judiciary, the activity of judges, relationship with the court and with the judges. So, a bit on the other side of the, okay, if you can just avoid having other means of communication, that would be nice, thank you. So let's start with our panel. We have a large panel, a very international one. I would leave the floor momentarily to our speakers today, our panelists today, starting from my left.
Ciao Massimo, thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here with you tonight. And I'm Fabio De Paulis. I am Associate General Counsel at Broadcom, and I serve as EMEA legal leader. So I cover the commercial business at the EMEA level for my company. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Cristian Cincer. I am from Mexico. I am a civil and commercial litigator with a strong emphasis on technology, and I am also Secretary General of the Ilustre Nacional Colegio de Abogados in Mexico. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Pierre-Yves.
Good afternoon. My name is Pierre-Yves Toumsin, coming from Brussels, Belgium. I'm a lawyer specialized in intellectual property, and besides that, I'm also a member of the Council of the Bar in Brussels.
Thank you. So, Ian.
Oh, hello. My name is Ian McDougall. I'm the General Counsel for LexisNexis and also the President of the LexisNexis Rule of Law Foundation.
Good. Pierre?
My name is Pierre Kirk. I have come to the law and artificial intelligence, not the law of artificial intelligence for now, through antitrust law, which I practiced as a partner with one of the world's leading firms for a number of years until several months ago when I retired out of the firm and am now devoting myself to the specific issue of law and artificial intelligence, which I have been a professor of in Paris for the last 6 years.
OK. Bon, je pense que je dois introduire. Moi, je suis Massimo Sterpi, je suis un avocat spécialisé en propriété intellectuelle et technologie. Je suis basé à Rome et je suis maintenant le président de la commission de droit de l'art. OK. So let's start our discussion. First of all, before entering the legal profession, of course, AI and generative AI are not impacting only the legal profession. So let's start with a wider, let's say, picture. So, for instance, Ian, what do you think will be the jobs, the kind of job that will be most impacted by AI?
Well, a very big question, but first of all, people are imagining a huge amount of job losses in the legal industry, for example. I don't believe that for reasons which I can come to later. But here is something that I think not a lot of people are considering. For a long time, developing countries have been utilizing a very, very large and cheap labor pool to take jobs which are being offshored from some more developed countries. If you look at the kind of jobs that these are in what I call the cognitive industries, they are low-level, repetitive, functional kind of jobs. These are precisely the jobs that AI is going to challenge first. And I think that, surprisingly, it may be a challenge for developing countries as much as for developed countries when AI starts to take some of these low-level repetitive jobs back onshore, so to speak, and to be done by computers. And remember, the computers that do this don't require good labor laws or time off for holidays or demand pay rises. They work 24 hours a day for the investment that it costs in upkeeping them. So I think that the jobs in many situations will change. The skill sets required will change fundamentally. I don't think it will result, for example, in the abolition of the legal profession or things like this. But there are a whole range of jobs where the skill sets will change rather than the jobs going themselves. But, can I just add, there will be a whole range of new opportunities that come up which we can't possibly imagine now. If I ask this audience, for example, who knew 40 years ago that a company which does something called a search engine would be employing 56,000 people around the world? Nobody knew what a search engine was. So I think we have to realize there are two things. The skill sets will change and new opportunities will arrive which will start to replace the outmoded skill sets and opportunities.
Yeah, notwithstanding the question was very broad, I think you raised a point that is not normally so much discussed, which is not only the vertical impact, but also the horizontal impact geographically. You know, let's turn, for instance, to Christian. Christian, how do you see this potential shift towards, you know, of works that were at some point, like say, moved to other countries where the labor force was more cheap? I'm thinking about call center, I'm thinking about accountancy being delegated, and now probably being reshored. Doesn't cannot this be like another factor of tension, you know, in the international trade?
I definitely agree, and I agree with what Ian stated. I believe that the situation is going to be very interesting to see which countries start to develop policies regarding these technologies, no? Because I think this has to become a part of public policy now, because it will depend on your preparation as a country. For example, India, no? That has a huge preparation in this area, and now everybody is outsourcing most of the technology and AI work to India, and also has a huge labor force with all of these call centers. And now you can have a personal assistant that's no longer in your office. No, this is changing things and the way that they will work. So I believe that this is a great opportunity for many countries to start to develop this horizontal approach. No? Not only looking at it like a specific individual job, but the way that we affect our culture and how we relate to this through our legal systems and through our culture as well. But education will determine this very much.
Fabio, a very simple question. You know, everybody says that, you know, AI will improve dramatically the quality of the output. And therefore, of course, don't think about the AI alone, but think about the couple human plus AI. Following a sentence that I like a lot, that the battle will not between humans and AI, but between humans and humans with AI. And, you know, what do you think about? Do you think that the improvement in GDP, the improvement in economic efficiency, will compensate the loss of job, or will be still a negative result?
No. Actually, I am very passionate about this topic because I'm a champion of AI. I see that this is going to change dramatically the way we operate at all levels, And we saw it coming, guys. It's not something that started today. It is something that started years ago. As lawyers, we started working in different ways 15 years ago, 20 years ago. And, you know, it kept on piling up. Now we are facing a situation where we can no longer deny that it is happening, and the change is going to be abrupt, imminently. The law, as we've seen it yesterday, the practice of law is going to change. To your point, I trust that all of you have tried, I don't know, ChatGPT, all right? And that's just the start. That's just the start. And the output, it's amazing. And you have to be indulgent as of today, because you have to consider, and getting to your point, that the quality of the output depends on the input, right? And what is the source of information the algorithm works on? That is a generalistic AI. But can you imagine when individual corporations, companies, law firms will start using its own AI, working on its own knowledge base? It's going to be massive. If, I don't know, Massimo, you were mentioning before, and I get to my question, the AI doesn't get tired. And it's the responsiveness and the accuracy of the response you can get is, you cannot make a comparison. It's just, there is no longer the risk of having an output that is missing or failing to consider any source of information, piece of evidence, or whatever is relevant for the outcome that you are looking for. It's all going to be there, and as opposed to a human dealing with that volume of information, we can be sure that the machine, the algorithm, is going to leverage and comment and analyze all the data it's been fed with. But the premise is very important. Who controls the data and the quality of the data? So the bottom line is, we will get to a point where, if we are smart enough as lawyers to use AI as a complement, as a, I would like it to see it as an associate, a junior associate, right? You just use it, you should expect the result, right? We cannot just say, whatever it says, that's the truth. No, 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 no. We remain humans with our knowledge and our expectations. It's like when a senior partner goes to an associate and says, can you please review this agreement or write me a letter on this topic? It's not that the senior partner just stops being a partner and knowing what he's supposed to know and relies entirely on the work on the junior associate or the associate. Quite the contrary. He knows what to expect and is ready to judge the outcome.
Yeah, sure.
So this is where we're going to. And once again, to your point, is going to be the level, the cost-saving effects and the increase in productivity is going to be massive.
Could I just make some comments on the technology?
Sure.
Because at Lexis we've been working on this for a number of years, so I think it's important to have just a basic understanding of the way that the large language models work. Sure. So what you've seen, for example, is things like ChatGPT, which are what I describe as open AI models. That basically means that they go out into the internet and they trawl everything they can find, and they use that to build up a statistical model of the language. Which words most commonly go together, basically, is the way that it works. Yeah, so that the answer is filled with all of the bias, all of the prejudice, all of the incorrect facts that are available on the internet. And so what you get is not a factual answer from an open LLM model. What you get is a statistically significant answer, yeah. Right? So, for example, one of my colleagues typed in the question, what should Harry do? Right? That was the question. Now, because there is so much out there on the internet which is about Harry Potter, the large language model presumed that he was talking about Harry Potter and come up with some suggestions about what Harry Potter should do. Yeah. And then there is something called a closed large language model, which is basically where you don't train it on everything that's on the internet, you train it on a restricted set of data, for example, the Lexis database, so that its expertise is limited, but much more secure than simply whatever it can control. So again, just as an example, if you ask the LexisNexis AI who won the Rugby World Cup, right, it would have no idea at all. Yeah, wouldn't answer it because it hasn't been trained on that. But it's less likely to hallucinate, in other words, to produce completely made-up answers, because the OpenAI model has nothing to do with facts. It has to do with a statistical analysis of which words fit together. Yeah,
Ian, actually, what you mentioned is absolutely correct, but actually also correspond to two subsequent phases of this large language model, because the first phase was go on the internet and look how like human language works, whatever it says, even completely stupid sentences. The second phase, and it was the horizontal phase. Now we have a vertical phase where, of course, they will deep dive into data lake which are reliable, like LexisNexis being a perfect example. At that point, you avoid the garbage in, garbage out problem.
Exactly. Yes.
Ian, sorry, Pierre, I wanted to ask you a different question based on what Fabio said. Actually, Fabio was talking about, how lawyers, and then we go back to lawyers, have an opportunity to use this technology to the best, to produce more quality, etc. But actually, let's go one step backwards. AI is actually an algorithm and data. The algorithm alone is an empty box, cannot produce anything. You need data. But when you need data, and the more data you have, the better the functioning. Then we go to the problem of ownership and exploitation of data. We were already terrified that certain companies, big corporations, had enormous amount of data that can use. But now they were still human-led company. Now imagine the same amount of data, or even more, being used by algorithms that can take automated decision, can do whatever. So don't you think that one of the big risks will be a surveillance society on a scale that was inconceivable when Orwell wrote his prophetic, but now a bit outdated 1984?
Oh my, what a loaded question. Let me just I'm going to try to take different elements of the question in order. First of all, it's the algorithm, it's the data, big data in general, but it's also computing power. So those are the three items that make what we're talking about today. Secondly, with regard to this question of data, ownership of data, et cetera, et cetera. The difficulty that we have today with regard to generative tools, and in our discussion today, I'm going to talk about AI systems as tools that are used and not as some sort of replacement for human beings. These are just tools, and those that know how to use them will be the winners in the game of tools. But with regard to data, the whole the technology that we're talking about, when we say ChatGPT, we're talking about generative pre-trained transformer, which is a technology basically which has been developed over the last 6 years, and now OpenAI has already gone beyond ChatGPT, and now they're on GPT-4, which means that they have data sets that are said to be a data set that is said to be about 5 times more than ChatGPT-3. That is to say, approximately a trillion what we call parameters, and parameters are basically the units that lead to the output. A trillion parameters, whereas ChatGPT-3 was based on about 175 billion parameters. So that's in 2017, when they started with regard to the data, we were talking about millions. With regard to GPT-1, which goes back to 2018, I believe. But coming back to this question of ownership of data, in the generative technology, you can be using photos that are subject to copyright. You can use images of paintings that are subject to copyright as data, data which is the database that is being used to be as training in the training model. And then what comes out, of course, is the algorithm which is using that data to come out with new images. But who owns, if copyright was not complied with, there was no permission given to use the original data, then who owns the output? Has copyright been violated by using those images? There are all kinds of court cases that are now starting to be developed with regard to companies that use the GPT technology and that have, without authorization, have been using copyrighted materials in their training data. So these are important issues. I would just want to say one thing now, since we're lawyers, is that the law will catch up. Okay, so there is a proposal for the EU AI Act, as I believe all of you know, which is now getting closer and closer to final adoption by the Council of the EU and the European Parliament. They just had a trilogue meeting 48 years ago and made some more steps. But these issues are going to be resolved by the law. And if I take the proposal for the AI Act, one of the requirements for high-risk operators is that they identify the data that they use in training, which means that they would have to identify material that was potentially subject to copyright that they use to train the algorithm, which leads to, I would say, potential lawsuits, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Pierre-Yves, alors tu m'as montré une photo faite par une generative AI, peut-être Dali ou Midjourney, qui était quelque chose de vraiment impressionnant. Alors, là, je me rappelle une chose intéressante, que le premier texte, disons, scientifique que j'ai trouvé en langue italienne sur la generative AI appliquée aux images, c'était un texte de la Banque d'Italie, que je ne m'attendais pas comme source de ce genre de choses, lié au fait qu'il s'attendait à l'utilisation de deepfake pour créer de financial scams, comme un deepfake de gouverneur de la Banque des États-Unis qui pouvait dire on va baisser les taux d'intérêt et donc dans 3 minutes, tous les bourses avaient des oscillations impressionnantes. Alors comment on va se défendre contre le deepfake, contre la voix, contre nos images, contre le deepfake? Il y a quelques jours, le Premier ministre italien a dû déposer une plainte pénale car quelqu'un avait réalisé une deepfake pornographique en utilisant son image. Comment on peut se défendre?
Je pense qu'ici, on touche à 2 ordres de considération. Il y a des considérations éthiques et des considérations juridiques aussi. L'éthique, effectivement, on dépasse les frontières de ce qu'il est possible de faire. Et effectivement, comme avec toute technologie, il y a des usages pervers qui peuvent en être faits, et tu as donné une série d'exemples de cela. Et cela peut avoir un impact très concret, juridiquement, et nous, les avocats, nous le comprenons bien, en termes de fiabilité de l'information, en termes de fiabilité de la preuve. Alors probablement que le législateur aura son rôle à jouer là-dedans. Pierre évoquait le AI Act qui est en préparation au niveau de l'Union européenne. Mais parmi les principes qu'on retrouve là-dedans, il y a aussi des principes de transparence. Il faut que la personne qui interagit avec une intelligence artificielle soit informée du fait qu'elle a en face d'elle une intelligence artificielle, qu'elle ne prenne pas pour argent comptant, pour argent humainement comptant, je dirais, ce qui est produit là. Donc ça, c'est une façon pour le droit d'aborder cette question. Et puis, et j'en terminerai par là, il y a aussi la technologie qui a un rôle à jouer. Je pense que celles et ceux qui s'intéressent à la question et qui lisent les actualités sur le sujet, cette semaine-ci, ont été marqués par ces articles qui évoquent une nouvelle technologie qui a été mise en place, une sorte de poison pill que l'on pourrait intégrer dans des fichiers images et qui viendrait corrompre certains pixels de manière telle que lorsqu'une image est réutilisée par l'intelligence artificielle afin de générer d'autres images, eh bien l'image, ne me demandez pas par quel miracle technologique, je ne suis qu'un avocat, mais l'image se détériore et on réalise que l'output, en fait, ne ressemble plus à rien, c'est une hallucination totale, et donc de cette façon-là, on permet, donc c'est une sorte de comme on avait les Digital Right Management Systems à l'époque sur les fichiers musicaux. Hein, donc c'est une forme de mesure technique de protection afin d'éviter des réutilisations non autorisées à mauvais escient de fichiers images.
J'aime beaucoup ta réponse car ça me porte sur une autre règle qui est qui est la seule barrière contre la dégénération des nouvelles technologies sont des autres technologies. Et en effet, il y a un autre cas que j'aimerais mentionner avant de passer à notre approfondissement sur la profession légale, un programme sur la plagiarism detection qui avait développé pour éviter que les étudiants allaient copier de parties des autres travaux sans les déclarer, maintenant a été fourni d'un algorithme qui est dans la mesure de détecter si un texte présenté par un étudiant a été écrit par une autre generative AI avec une précision de 99,9%. Donc la technologie peut éviter la dégénération d'une autre technologie. Fabio.
Yes. Actually, and I really hope that I got everything because I cannot speak French that much, but I think I got the sense, and I would like to add two considerations on what Pierre-Yves said, because actually you've touched on one of the major concerns and challenges that AI is posing to us, right? And when you look at this, or at least when I look at this, and I ask myself, who should be the owners? Who should be held responsible to address this kind of issues? And it would be easy just to say the regulators, right? Because of course, there will be regulation set forth. But how? So the first level is, of course, regulators, but we need global standards and international cooperation, because whatever we agree, in Italy, in France, in Europe it's easy, right? Let's say at European level. But whatever we agree here, unless we have global standards and policies that are agreed to at a global level, we go nowhere, right? Because it's too easy to evade and find escape doors and to reach deviations that we don't want to reach. And on top of that, I would like to say that, so the owners, one owner is the regulator, but the other owner should be the society at large. Each and all of us should become aware of what's going on. And we should inform ourselves, and we should expect that even the education system, we should see a promotion of digital literacy. It's impossible nowadays that ChatGPT is known to the public. It has to be known to everybody, and everybody must be made aware of the challenges that this technology presents. Because we cannot just say it's not happening. We cannot hide ourselves. So how do we face this? With education, knowledge, at all levels. It should really start at school with kids. At the very beginning, up to university, we have to change the way we conceive education, also for lawyers. I mean, I've studied law with books this thick. Go and study, I don't know, corporate, private law, whatever it was. You sit down and you pass the exam. Is it what we need tomorrow? I don't think so. Because knowledge is there. It's available. Yeah, what we do need is to know how to navigate the system. To first of all, be aware of the presence of the system, understand how it works, the skeleton, and then, with experience, learn how to take the best advantage out of this. Just pretend it is not there, or just to hide behind the challenges is not going to help. So the challenges are there at all levels, ethical, criminal. You know, imagine deep fakes. Imagine what can be done at the election of the US president. Does it mean that, you know, we just close our eyes, it's not going to happen? No, it's happening, it's there. So we have to be aware. Sure. We have to be aware. And this is why global standards are necessary.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, absolutely. Now, this was a very interesting and very deep, large introduction to the subject. But now let's go into the legal profession. Okay. I have a first observation. First of all, because I'm sort of in charge of the technology of our firm, and they asked me, my colleagues were asking me for many years, why don't we use artificial intelligence like it was like it does everything that, and then I don't have to work or something like that. I always said, actually, we have already AI everywhere. Yes. Imagine when you're trying to archive a file and the system automatically suggests which file you should use or give you a list. Why? Because it takes the keywords and give you a suggestion. Or imagine automated translation that has been around for years, now reaching levels which are unbelievable. So has been around. But probably the turning point that made like a sort of awakening of the legal profession was generative AI, because it simulates the way we write, the way we respond, the way we act. Okay, so starting from there, and and not starting from Ian, because that will be too easy. He will be next on that. What do you think, for instance, Christian, will be the most impacted legal activities that can be like replaced or done very similarly by AI, among the various typical activity, from drafting to legal research, from, I don't know, negotiating to other typical activity of a lawyer? What are the most impacted?
I think at this point, we are underestimating the power of this technology, I believe. And it would seem that the answer to that question would be the repetitive tasks. But I think it goes way beyond that, no? And I think we are just looking at the embryonic stage of the development of these technologies. And when they develop, I think we will have to realize that they can do a lot of things better than we can, no?
Sure.
And it doesn't mean that they will substitute us, but I think it'll be a little bit more of what has been said here, that a human with AI, but I do think a lot of activities will no longer be done by a human because it won't be cost effective. So at this point, I believe that paralegals are in a new situation because if their work is research, then research can be more cheaply done and faster, even though there are a lot of hallucinations or these technologies tend up to make up things because they don't know, they're just probability guessing, no? But the question is, I believe we have to prepare for what's coming. Right now, I think revision of documents, which has been along in arbitration for a long time, you don't have to go through these documents by hand, drafting contracts, even drafting repetitive drafts of documents for litigation. But I think, as you mentioned, I think we will get into deeper aspects that we believe are only human, no? Like negotiations. Can an AI help in a negotiation? I think it can, and it'll come to a point where it'll be difficult to tell the difference as to what you're dealing with. Yeah. So I think we need to prepare for these repetitive things that are already there, that have happened in a lot of industries, but we need to prepare for what's coming. No?
Yeah, sorry, just a sort of comments, if you ever played poker against a computer program, it can bluff. It can do a lot of stuff that we would consider human, out of our ingenuity. Instead, they are very good at doing this kind of thing.
I think, unfortunately, we are overestimating the value that we bring as humans to a lot of things. Right. Obviously, there are things that will be difficult to replace, like dealing with a client, no? Yeah. But still, I think we better be prepared. No?
Yeah. Now, not to be unfair, I want to hear from Ian how the artificial intelligence is transforming, let's say, the precedent research or the legal research, which was a major part, and now we go back on this point later, a major part of the work of each lawyer, but especially of the younger lawyer. So what's the latest news about the legal research?
Yeah, so the thing, I suppose, which has been touched on here that I think is important to start with from a basic point of view is what we're talking about now is generative AI. Extractive AI has been used, at least by us, for many years now. And extractive AI is the ability to go into a database and make intelligent links so that when it's queried, it can produce very good responses. The big leap now is the ability of generative AI to produce new content, new material. Yeah, and so this is things like me asking the system, please write a letter to my client explaining the law of negligence in New York, right? And it will do it. But not just that. I shall say to it things like, that's too complicated, make it simpler.
Yeah.
And it'll do that too. So there are all kinds of things, some of which have been touched on, for example, document assessment. I can imagine, for example, data rooms in merger and acquisition work, for example, hugely reducing the amount of time that it takes to make an assessment of all the documents in a data room during an acquisition process, for example. But it's all of these processes which we previously thought of as being cognitive are actually capable of being reproduced. And so I also agree with the point that there are many ways which I can't yet imagine that are going to be used. But all of these kind of things are now available to us. This kind of idea that I just said, for example, here is a document. I'm going to put the document in, and I'll ask the AI, write an email to my client explaining what this document says, right? All of this kind of stuff which we would normally have had to do ourselves. But here, can I just say, here's a big challenge for the legal industry. For the past, 200 years, the legal industry has made money out of time, right?
Yeah, we come back on that.
Okay.
We come back.
That's going to be one of the biggest changes.
Is a turning point, I agree.
And that will be under threat.
Yeah.
So all of these things are now available. All of these technologies, the ability to do all the things I've described is available right now, and that's going to continue to be the case.
Pierre, other kind of impact that you see as most likely?
Well, I have three comments. First of all, in terms of precedent, I would like to look at the accounting profession. And in particular, the accounting profession when Excel was first developed by Microsoft back in the 1990s. And Excel, spreadsheet technology, if you like, was able to allow one accountant to do what it would take armies of accountants to do when they were handwriting and keeping accounts and so on and so forth. But that did not in any way have a negative impact on the accounting profession. Basically, the accounting profession went up, became a more strategic accounting partner of companies, and let Excel do the time-consuming work. And today, the population of accountants in the world is far greater than it was in the 1990s. So it did not reduce the number of accountants in the world. The second thing that I wanted to say, and this is a little bit in response to what both Fabio and Ian commented on, is that there's we as lawyers are going to have to develop the skill set of prompting, okay? Basically when you get bad output out of generative technology, it's because maybe your input question was not very good, okay? Prompting means the words that you use in order to get output from generative, from any GPT system. The word that we need to use is not tool, it's system, because that is what is in the EU AI Act. We talk about systems. So there's a whole new, first of all, there's a whole new profession in companies of prompting engineers, okay? These are not lawyers that I'm talking about. Prompting engineers, which their role is to extract the best and most useful information for their company from this tool, which is GPT technology. And the same principle applies to lawyers. The quality of the prompting that we do as lawyers will determine the quality of the information that we get as output, because these tools simply give us information, which leads to my final point, which is to doubt. The word doubt is now more important than ever for lawyers. When you see images, you have to ask yourself the question, is it a deep fake? Doubt. doubt on the image, doubt on everything now,
Interesting.
doubt on anything that comes out of generative technology because it might not be true. It's just an exercise in, you know, conditional probability with, if you're in GPT-4 with, you know, 1 trillion parameters, but it might be wrong. And I know it because when I asked ChatGPT-3 to do a little summary of my own career, it got it all right until the end, when at the time I was a partner in Paul Hastings, but it made me a partner in Cleary Gottlieb.
Okay. No, I like very much your late statement when you say that, you know, we have to become actually a professionals of doubting, you know, because we're, in a sense, in the last 200 years, following what Ian was saying, we were actually legal oracle. People were coming to us to get the official response. The law says. We were not saying, I think. We were saying, the law says. Okay? We were the oracle. Now the oracle is the machine. It's actually the generative AI. At that point, we are the double checker, so to say, which is an interesting point. You know, Eva, you know, I have another point because it was already touched upon when Christian was talking about paralegals. You know, I have my own thoughts, but I will share with you later. Considering partners, associates, and the paralegal, who do you think will be more, let's say, impacted negatively by generative AI? Do you think it will be across the board, or some categories will be impacted more than others?
Well, obviously, we all know, working in law firms, that there are various profiles involved in the, let's say, value chain of legal advice. And the first part of that chain are performing those repetitive tasks which are at risk because of the AI, or which can be improved because of the AI. We also know that the senior you get, the more you get to talk with the client, work on your empathy, work on the helicopter view you can have on a matter. So it's a totally different work than drafting submissions, drafting contracts, etc., etc. So most probably, the support staff, the trainees, the junior associates will be more impacted. But again, this does not mean that they're likely to disappear at all. Like someone in the panel said, this shouldn't be a war between AI and humans, but rather an evolution between humans and humans using AI. So we should definitely educate all the people in the value chain, in that legal advice value chain, educate these people to use these tools, to use them properly. As Pierre said, it's not because you switch on the AI that you will switch off your criticism, your doubts. You should remain critic vis-à-vis the results of the AI that you can get. And maybe one last point. I'm very optimistic by nature, seeing the half-full glass. This AI phenomenon is maybe putting the focus, shedding light on the very DNA of the lawyer. Now we see what's the difference in our practice. Now we see what is our added value. And what is intelligence? Now that we're in Rome, I guess I can make a bit of Latin and touch upon the etymology of intelligence. Intelligence is made of the Latin words interligere, which is basically making a link between things. And the human lawyer knows all the particulars of the case, knows the background of the case, knows what's important for the client, knows the psychology of the client. And he will make these links. He will interligere between the various aspects of the files. And so far, so good. I think an AI is not able to make such deep links between all the facets of a legal matter.
Can I try an analogy to see if this works? This audience can tell me. Here's how I imagine the difference. In the 1800s, to be a taxi driver, knowledge of a horse was a key and critical skill, and you couldn't be a taxi driver if you couldn't manage a horse. In order to get you from one place to another. And then the internal combustion engine comes along, and knowledge of a horse becomes an entirely useless skill. What's required now is a set of skills to which levers do I pull and push, which pedals do I press, how do I turn things. An entirely different set of skills in order to do the same thing. Yeah. And so if you kind of take that as an analogy, that piece of technology there, it appeared, the internal combustion engine, it didn't require the taxi driver to know what is the compression ratio of the cylinder. It didn't require the taxi driver to know how the distributor spun around in the car. It just required the taxi driver to know how to interact with the technology to produce the outcomes that the taxi driver wanted it to produce. And I think that might be a helpful way to think about it.
Yeah. Massimo, would you allow me just one additional thought on what has just been said? Because I really share your view, guys. And in terms of the change in approach that I see that we would have to deal with in the future is that as lawyers, we've always been focused on hard skills, right? We've always been judged on how many things we know. How in-depth can we go in the knowledge of antitrust law, competition law, or procedural law, whatever it is? If we concentrate only on those skills, we are going nowhere, because our competition is going to be the AI there. All the knowledge is going to be kind of, provided that we are in the position to certify and verify the accuracy of the information, we're going to lose there 100%. Always. We will need to really focus on our soft skills. And what I need by that is this. And I'm using, this is not my words, but we should move from being lawyers and be seen as jealous guardians of the law to being benevolent custodians of the law, meaning we should be in a position where we know what we do. Right? Because we are lawyers. We will continue going to law schools. But we will need to expand our knowledge-based, meaning the skill set we have. And allow me to give an example in terms of what happened to me in my practice. And I say practice, now I'm in in-house counsel, so it's like we've been involved in a very big litigation. And imagine, and this is happening, so you can do it, and in 1 year time, it's going to be standard process, right? Predictive analytics. You will go there, you will present the facts, this is the law, what is the potential outcome, right? And it's not that you have to rely on it and you say, okay, whatever that says, that's going to be the reality. It's not a commandment. But you will receive a very detailed and objective guidance and idea of the outcome of the proceedings, right? And but this is not what happened in terms of, because we didn't use AI at that time. But we were party of this litigation. It was emergency proceedings. We went before the judge, and the judge said we were defendants and trying to mediate and find a settlement before them. He said, instead of acting as all mediators should do, right? So finding negative arguments on both sides so that you would ease the negotiation. He just ran at us and said, guys, you're wrong. There is no way that you can, win this case, even in the merits. How could you possibly be in here? And then he looked at both parties and said, okay, now go and find a settlement. Can you imagine? We were in a very crazy and bad situation. How can you possibly settle on this basis? When the judge just said, you're going to die here. Ultimately, we settled because there are intangibles that are always there, regardless of what the law says. Mm-hmm. So you can ask the question to the AI prior to a litigation, before a negotiation, and say, my dear friend, what's the status of the law? What's the likelihood of the outcome of this litigation? And you may just use that as one tool, but not your definitive tool in order to make the final decision. It's a fantastic aid, but it's not going to just, replace our mind.
Yeah.
And
That's interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting example. Christian, I wanted to move to another subject. I read an interesting study saying that, whereas a typical advantage of big firms towards a smaller firm was that they were able to deploy hordes of people on a very short basis when needed. Now, this competitive advantage of a big firm can be reduced because actually you can deploy artificial intelligence 24/7 and to do a big part of the job, maybe the repetitive part. So do you share this view that that can be a transformative effect also in the relationship between a big and small or medium firm because of AI?
Definitely. And I would like to answer that question by saying something first in relation to, we've been discussing how lawyers will use this technology, but what we haven't discussed yet is how our clients are going to use this technology. And as a litigator, here is an in-house counsel that had to hire a lawyer for this litigation. And in the future, what are our clients going to expect from us? And I think that's often left out of these conversations, and it's a very crucial point. Because it's not, we feel like, okay, we need to use the system so that we can get better access to the law or to precedent, or that has already been around for a long time. And I mean, it's getting more sophisticated, but now clients are going to start looking at our work very differently. And they're going to expect us to use these technologies. They are going to use these technologies. They have their own databases. They can do their own chatbots. And this is going to change the way the game works. And so to get to the question, definitely, I think that the advantage that big law firms have in that sense is going to diminish very much, because you will no longer need these huge amounts of people. And that is to see, I mean, we've been discussing that AI will not take away jobs. I think that in the beginning it will. It'll change jobs, but it'll also, there will be a time where we need to adjust to this. And law firms that have hundreds of lawyers might not need all of those lawyers, and they might just need the senior partners who are dealing with these soft skills and who are dealing with the clients, and so I think that that's going to be an adjustment. But I also think, I also agree that these things tend to even themselves out, and we will have new abilities, but we will start to see, I believe, there have always been, I mean, my area is litigation, and so most of the litigation, at least in my country, is done by small firms, not by the big firms. The firms, there's a lot of litigation in big firms in arbitration, but not in litigation as such. And I think we're going to see that start to become more democratic in a general sense, and you will have solo practitioners that can do a lot of things now because they can outsource them to the system.
Correct. Please.
If I can add something, of course, between us, we are looking at this issue from a lawyer perspective, but let's look at this from the client perspective as well. This is a very positive evolution from our clients because they will receive excellent advice from a very large range of lawyers. So deepened analysis is no longer something for those big firms having those big libraries, like university-like libraries. No, any firm, even the sole practitioner, can get access to the relevant legal information through the databases, can get insights through the possible AI behind the databases, can analyze, can find the right results. So it is also something very positive for our clients and the quality of our services.
Yeah. Let's move. Pierre, I have a question for you. About the impact on AI on the, let's say, training of young lawyers. I was hearing this comment that I would like to share with you, that as, the typical activities of a trainee were legal research, drafting, and translation, especially in countries where, you have a language that must be translated, like ours, for instance, now they will be more of a liability than a resource, and we may end up at a point where a trainee should be paying to be trained.
I wouldn't go that far, but I tend to be, as you may have understood, optimistic with regard to this whole general question. And to take the specific question of young lawyers, we were all young lawyers once. Huh?
Sure.
And it's as we've said. One is it's the whole a whole new set of skills that have to be learned. And secondly, it depends on what context you put the learning of those skill sets into. For me, I can only insist upon this. All of these AI systems that we are talking about, they are simply tools, okay? So in the history, in the history of what we are today, there have been different tools that have been developed. We mentioned some of them, such as going from horse taxis to motorized taxis. That's not the most important tool that we ever had, but I would say the developing of the printing press, Gutenberg 1455, that is a tool. Electricity is, shall we say, it's a utility, but it's also a tool. PCs, personal computers, it's a tool. And AI systems, they are tools, which means that young lawyers have to be trained in the use of these tools. And the use of the tool means that you are going, that to me, you know, using generative AI systems, it is information, okay? It is information, and then the tool set, the traditional tool set that Massimo just mentioned, drafting skills, verification, checking, doubting, all of these are applied to the information that you have obtained through generative AI tools. And I would say also, and this is going back to this question of big firms versus law firms, small firms, solo practitioners, is that the advantage of the big firms is that they have the resources. Because if I were I'm no longer in a big firm, but if I were, and I were confronted with this problem today, it wouldn't be one tool. I would not be only on OpenAI, but I would be on Google Bard. I would be using all of the potential tools, because all of these tools are information. And so the young lawyers then, having obtained the information, then all of the lawyerly skills to craft the product for the client come from using the information, because the information itself is just the raw material. It's not the product that you produce for a client.
Thank you, Pierre. Very interesting. Fabio, I have a question for you as an in-house lawyer. Would you expect a lawyer using AI to tell you? Like, I did this job, you know, I drafted this contract, I made legal research by using AI, or can I keep silent, like, don't ask, don't tell?
I think that the answer is in what Harriet just said. I mean, ultimately, it's a tool. To be honest with you, I would be surprised if a lawyer doesn't, because I would hold the lawyer responsible for the outcome. So whatever it's signed, you put your signature below, that's your job.
Absolutely.
I don't care where that job comes from. And to quite the contrary, if I know, because I could do, let's say I cannot do the same job, but imagine that I would know or anticipate what the outcome would or should be. And if I can get to that outcome myself using AI in 1 hour, then I would not be I would not, you know, I would be surprised if I would be billed 2 days of work to get the outcome or the result that I would have gotten in 2 hours or 1 hour using AI. So the answer is yes. Because the consequence is ultimately the lawyer is responsible for the outcome. You know, if you sign an opinion, Massimo, and you send it to me, I'm not going to blame the AI. I'm going to blame you if it's wrong,
Absolutely.
Or say congratulations if it's right.
I make an example out of our, we were preparing a 200 pages long brief to be filed the next day.
Yes.
In Italian, because it was to be filed. And
Yes.
actually, the American client wanted to see it. It was impossible. So we said, okay, we put it into DeepL.
DeepL, of course.
In 30 seconds, maybe a minute, it was translated. Of course, we said, we are sending to you an automated translation that we are not in a position to review for information purposes only.
This is customary.
Of course.
This is customary. This happens.
Exactly.
And actually, and this is what, as in-house counsel, we should be expecting. Once again, if you would have come back to me saying, listen, I've used a trainee for 2 days, full days, translating that, and you have to charge me whatever for a translation done by a trainee, that would have been worse than a translation done by DeepL. So the short answer to your question is yes.
Interesting. Okay. I mentioned one case. Christian, do you have like experience in your real life profession about telling or not telling?
I think this is a very important point. There are some precedents, very famous ones that you've probably heard about a lawyer in New York that filed a brief done by ChatGPT, and the precedents did not exist. And then there's this judge in Texas, which I think is relevant for this conversation, that has made a mandate that every lawyer present a document saying that they did not use AI while doing a brief.
Or if they use it, they check the results.
Well, but apparently this judge, from what I read, is saying that they cannot use AI, which I believe is the other extreme. You know? And I definitely agree with what Fabio is saying. I think it will be expected of us to use these technologies, ever more so by our clients, but we are ultimately responsible. And we have to be very careful about what we put our name to. And that's the easy question. I agree with Yuval Noah Harari, that says we should know when we're dealing with an AI, and I agree with that. The point here is this is a human using AI, and I believe that's something we don't tell people we're going to use Google Maps to get to the destination. We use Google Maps to get to the destination, and nobody cares as long as we get there. I think that's the easy response to that.
During my latest meeting with my American friends both in Los Angeles and New York, some of them, because I asked the question, and they said they change the terms and conditions of their engagement letters, explicitating that they are using artificial intelligence in their research, translation, and drafting work. So it's there. So it's not that you say in person, but if you read carefully, it's there.
Massimo, just to deep dive just 1 second. Everybody is using databases, right? We do the search, you use the keywords, and you get the results of the most relevant or recent case law on whatever is the subject matter. This has been in the market for years now. So lawyers are using already now this kind of technology. The next step with generative AI, what you can ask, so assuming that the content is correct and validated, so that the database is the official one, so that it's not a problem of mistakes in the content. So as of yesterday, you just had the list of case law. Generative AI, you would ask the AI, can you please summarize the most relevant ratios out of this? And then it gets back to you with 3 pages summarizing 10 cases. Correct. So that's massive. So when you ask what a trainee could do, the trainee could interact with the AI, insert the adequate prompt, knowing how to draft the prompt, and then check. And then check the outcome. So instead of doing the job of the lawyer who just filed it without double checking, so you have 3 pages, going back and referring to case law or whatever, the trainee could go back, double check, and say, yes, this is accurate. And
just a joke, Mr. Schwartz, the famous lawyer in New York, that did that. Actually, in his defense, he stated that he asked to ChatGPT, but are these decisions real? And ChatGPT said, yes, they are.
Can I just add
Don't ask.
That's hilarious. Can I add just a very important thing? Is that there's when you deal with generative products, there's a cutoff date. Okay, it's like you're not. The output does not reflect the state of the world yesterday or today, but it's the state of the world maybe 2 or 3 years earlier when they stopped feeding data into the product in the training phase. And so, in fact, any lawyer that is obtaining information through a generative product has a time gap between what the product cutoff date is, and for instance, OpenAI will tell you exactly what the date is for its various products, and the date of using the product for information. And the lawyer is responsible for that as well, which is why I insist this is just a tool to obtain information, and then the lawyer does work using that information, but it is not legal advice.
If I could just say, that from our perspective, to just slightly modify that, that's absolutely true for open AI systems. For a closed AI system, like Lexis, it's up to the second.
Yeah, sure. That's different, yeah.
So, yeah. So it is important to remember the two types of AI systems, with the open AI system, which is just trawling the internet, or closed AI system, which is trained on a specific database.
Yeah, that's very important. But now we come to the elephant in the room that was already evoked a few minutes before, and then I will, in fact, ask the question to Ian. In the last 200 years, especially the Anglo-Saxon legal profession has been based on hourly billing, which is very good to manage a service company. But now that what you used to do in hours can be done in seconds, is hourly billing still possible, advisable, like the optimal, or suboptimal?
Frankly, I don't see how. I mean, I don't know, unless the legal profession as a whole is literally going to charge by the second, then I don't see how that practically works. What I think is more likely to happen is what's happened in most of the other professions that we have. People don't charge, by and large, for their time. They're charging for value. They're making an assessment, and the market usually has something to do with this as well, making an assessment about what value they're providing to you. Sometimes that works, sometimes the market doesn't work, and people are able to charge exorbitant amounts because they've got the market to themselves. But by and large, they're not charging you just purely for time. And we all know, for example, that it's perfectly possible for a lawyer to spend 6 hours drafting a document that turns out to be entirely useless. But that law firm will still charge you for the 6 hours that it took them to put that document together. And when you are in a situation where, as I have just said, I can get a document assessment done inside a second, I don't see how charging for time is going to be sustainable. Now, obviously, if someone comes along with some genius solution to that question, I don't know. But if I could just add to that something we were talking about before, which is the nature of lawyers using AI and how the customers like me, an in-house counsel, will be using that. Eventually, this debate about should I disclose AI or should I not will become a moot point, because if you're not using AI, I'm not going to use you. So there will be that element to it as well. This will evolve into a situation where it is a necessity, not an option. And when it is a necessity, then I'm going to sit down to you and say, okay, so what's the basis upon which you're going to charge me now? And we'll start to come to a decision. But it certainly won't be on the basis of no matter how long this case lasts, I'm going to charge you by the day.
Okay. Fabio, I turn to you because here I put together a few things that we just heard, like the hourly billing on the one hand, but on the other hand, also charging by the value and things like that. But what do you think that a company expects at this point? Because, in a sense, and there is another comment that I wanted to join with that. I'm sure you noticed that some of the firm in New York and some of the top one, even in other cities in the States, raised the hourly fee at levels that are like unconceivable. You're talking to partners that are charging 17, 18, 20, 100, $2,000 per hour, okay? And they say, because I asked, why do you charge so much? And they say, because actually our productivity improved dramatically. Because now, whatever we do is not done by hand and then copied by secretary and then double check. Whatever we do is accelerated. And that goes back to who will be most impacted, partners, associates, or paralegal. So how a company expects the next billing to happen?
This is tough, huh? What I can tell you is what we are doing right now, right, and what we expect. We go outside for high value and very complicated issues that cannot be solved internally. And those issues, whenever that happens, it's not a question of money. You look out for the best and you pay whatever the best is asking for, I'm sorry. Of course, you go out for litigation. And that's a very interesting topic, not for this session, maybe the next one, but I would expect major changes there, and I would hope that the litigation, that environment is going to change. So, but then in that case, we are kind of forced, right? Because we cannot represent ourselves, so you need a litigator to go and defend. But the reason why you need it is because, as of today, you need a lawyer to go and defend yourself in court, because that's how things work. But even that could change in the future, who knows? So the only justification, and that goes to Ian's point, is only high value. If there is no such high value, there is no way that we can pay for that money, because most of the things we can do it by ourselves internally, and in the future even more so, even more so. So but that's incredible. I mean, you guys start for yourself. If you have to check for yourself, you can create templates. Just, I don't know, if there is any in-house counsel here, just go and try. I don't know if you need to credit collection, letter number 1, number 2, number 3, and you have it. Then you can play with it. Of course, you have to play with it. You have to tailor it to your specific needs. But if you have an idea, it's a question of seconds to double check whether the idea is a good idea or a bad idea, it's workable or it's not workable. So it's, I would encourage everybody to get acquainted with this as soon as possible, because there will be lawyers who will do it, and lawyers who will not.
Christian, I ask you a question, and probably you can join your comment to my question. Don't you think that what you said is absolutely, clear? But my impression, which is something that has happened already in many other fields, is what I call polarization, meaning that there will be still work at the very, very simple level, bread and butter. There will be work at the top complexity level, and the Death Valley in between. So our profession, that used to be a bourgeois profession, where many people can do a good living and some can do a very good living, is becoming probably something different, where someone will survive like a lumpenproletariat, someone else will be hyper rich because they will have all the instrument, all the capability, all the the complexity they can cover, but nothing in between.
Okay. I'm not a futurist. I don't see I cannot, and I'm not able to see in the future. But there are many. This question can be answered at different levels. First of all, there might be spaces where, notwithstanding it is possible that companies can do the job by themselves in-house, they either don't want to do it, they decide to outsource it, and they still go to lawyers. Then the question is, how much are we going to pay for it? I don't know. But there is for sure room for that space, all right? Yeah. And maybe if a company is really careful about margins and they don't head counts, it might well be the case that even for standardized and yeah, standardized agreement, you would still go outside. You would still go outside and ask for guidance for lawyers. When it gets to what the lawyers of the future could do, in-house and outside, well, there are several professions that I can think of. We now have a legal operation function, legal ops. I mean, 5 years ago, legal ops would have been a nonsense. Somebody would have said, what? Well, this is a crucial function within the company. There is a legal technologist, a person who has to take the pace with and integrate the law with IT. I was taking notes before, and yeah, I was coming up with this concept of legal knowledge engineer, right? Yeah. Who's going to be there and technically computerize the legal services. There must be for the closed environment. Imagine yourself within a company or even working for a law firm, and you have to build your own know-how. Who's going to do that? A pure tech guy and or a legal tech guy. So a person who has the capabilities to play with the code and has the legal knowledge to understand that what is technically coding and checking is accurate. Yeah. These are professions that today are not here, but that's going to happen in the future. So, and once again, if we look ahead, university will have to change. The way we will approach the study of the law will have to change. Otherwise, I mean, we're not going to keep up.
Christian, you had comments.
I just wanted to mention something very quickly on that sense. I think we're going to see, and again, it's difficult to talk about the future, but I think we're going to see a little bit of a democratization of the law, and we have to take that into account. And I also think that if we're smart, we can use these systems to increase access to justice, which is something that's not very much discussed, but I think is very relevant. In Latin America, the World Justice Project says that, it's a weird statistic, but it says that 10 out of every 11 people that have a legal problem don't go to a lawyer. I just can't grasp that statistic. It means 1 out of every 11 people go to a lawyer. And I think that's going to change. And I think also that these closed systems, which are in the present but are the near future, we're talking about these open systems which are very cool, but they're very useless for very specific queries. And when you get to these closed systems, these closed systems, firms are going to develop them, but there are also going to be closed systems for rent, where you can buy a subscription and you can use the general closed system. And I think that's going to increase access as well. So in a positive sense, it's going to have an impact, but it's also going to create more work, and that's going to have an impact in the courts, which I think will also change the way that we do litigation. I think it's going to be a very massive change that's going to come.
Good point. Pierre-Yves, do you think that lawyers know when they start using generative AI that what they put into generative AI, the prompts they put, are going to be used by generative AI, may end up in front of eyeballs they were not expected to come in touch with? The famous cases where, the Samsung guys that actually had a meeting about new products and then asked ChatGPT to write a memo about the meeting. And that was the end of it. The memo was perfectly correct. Then a few weeks later, a teenager in Korea asked ChatGPT, what will be the new products from Samsung, and he gets the list, and he published the list online, and they were accurate because actually, and they said, yeah, because if you give the information to ChatGPT, especially the free version, they have the right to make use because they will learn, and then it will be part of their, let's say, shared knowledge.
Well, I think you gave the answer. If the story you told us is true, well, the answer is yes. You can share that sensitive information with the outside world. This brings us to the key question, and I think that everybody in this panel tackled this question, and those who came into this room with a very limited knowledge of AI should maybe come back home with this key takeaway. You may be thinking that AI is the ChatGPT that you find for free on the internet. Okay, that's one sort of AI. That's open AI. That's what you called generalistic AI. And that's maybe, to put it very simple, the bad AI for we, the lawyers.
Professional use.
The professionals, yeah. Next to that, you have what we will call the good AI in a closed environment, which is kind of tailor-made for your firm, or at least for your purposes. An AI environment in which you master the data sets that you use. An AI for which you pay, but in exchange you receive guarantees in terms of confidentiality, and that was your question. Of course, you should read, you should first read. Nobody does that, the small letters, but you should do that. You should read the terms and conditions governing the tool that you will be using and ensure that it provides for sufficient safeguards in terms of confidentiality of the info. And then if you use such good AI tool, it is very useful. It can prove very useful for your firm. And then you can disclose that to your client because your client will be confident in the tool you are using and will see the added value in that tool. To give an example, and it will, you will understand that Massimo, as an IP lawyer, I've been using Darts IP for years. Darts IP is a database of IP case law. Well, it's crucial to my daily work, and my clients love to know that I'm using Darts IP because they know I'm using a reliable, efficient tool that will be beneficial to their case.
Sure. One last question to Pierre. How much use of AI will be compliant with the lawyer's duty of care?
Yeah. Well, I would say, once again, coming back to my insistence that we're talking about tools that are used by lawyers, it's the same duty of care that you would use if you're using .IP, or if you're using a spell checker on your computer, or if you're using Google Translate, which is that the lawyer is ultimately responsible, which means that the lawyer is not outsourcing to these tools the law itself, or the legal advice, but when you use Google Translate, all I can say is doubt, because it's not perfect, even though it has been, by using natural language processing techniques, it has become improved. But believe me, it can still get it wrong in terms of context. So the duty of care, to me, it's, in a way, it's part of the added value that we've been talking about of the lawyer. The duty of care is to doubt, to be active, to use the tools, whether it's a spell checker, whether it's a translate, an algorithm that does translations, whether it's generative, it's a generative pre-trained transformer tool, GPT, to verify, to doubt, to use all of that as input, but the final product is the lawyer. It's the lawyer's product. And that's where, experience in, the duty of care. It's also a question of experience. I would allow myself to say that I think that younger lawyers are perhaps less conscious of the duty of care as more experienced lawyers that have seen a lot more stuff. And but the duty of care is constant, and that's the beauty of our profession, is that when we sign, when we say it to the client, it comes from us, and we have made our best efforts according to the duty of care in the interest of the client.
Yeah. So we reached our time, is 3:30. Let me wrap in 3 sentences, probably what I learned personally this afternoon. First, understand how it works. Second, double check whatever it produces. And third, add value, add human value, what would you get from the generative AI. Thank you.